our tax consultant told us we were not going to be getting our first disbursement until July, but as you can see, we received some in May and June. So the total for the last fiscal year is $1.4 million. It's way exceeded what we were expecting. And this last remittance that we just got on the 24th is almost double what we got the month before. So I had to call them and find out why. That was just, it was more than our regular sales tax, so it really looked odd to me why we got so much. So I called and asked why, and she said in June and July, those two amounts included advances. So they were kind of estimating what our sales tax might be, and they trued it up in August, and our total remittance was supposed to be 1.4 million. So the last payment in August was truing that up. It's just really so new that they don't know what we're getting, and so there was advances involved, and so they said probably won't be till we get a couple quarters in that really is going to smooth out, and we'll figure out what the real revenue that we can count on is going to be. But this is far exceeding what we budgeted. So this is the revenue, and our expenditures are zero. Heard that we are starting some projects. Bill can talk more about that. And I know that we are recruiting. We have a lot of new positions in the budget. So expect to see some expenditures in the next report.
Amazing. Thank you, Ruth.
You're welcome.
It's too bright.
Don't you remember the good old days? Yeah.
Well, the true good old days was when it was paneling and it was shaped in an L or a big U. That was really bright, and it was literally paneling like you would find in a mobile home or a trailer that you have to register at DMV. So it was quite bright and unusual. Moving on from that, from reminiscing about the good old days.
You miss me, I know.
Yeah. The expenditures that we have ongoing right now, we'll come back to that in a moment. It's not a huge expenditure, but it is one that I want to make sure that you're aware of. What I'd like to cover is, in the minutes, we set goals and priorities, or not necessarily priorities, but we defined what is public safety, or what is safety. And those 10 things that we came up with were police presence, street and sidewalks, lights and bike lanes and paths, taking care of those, dealing with our homelessness issue, blight issues, city personnel, parks and trees, economic development, community and administration. That's just how they were titled and highlighted. I think everyone still recalls the exercise we went through and how we narrowed that down to what safety was. The other document, and why this is important, is because in May of this year, you were given a document at our very first meeting of what our proposal was for our annual budget that we were preparing at the time. And what I'd like to do is just take a minute and make sure with the Oversight Committee that the document you were presented in May matches what the public safety definition is that you provided last month. So in that document and what we've included in our annual fiscal budget, none of these have been filled, none of this money's been spent. It's all still sitting there, but this is what our plan was. We want to make sure that our plan meets what you are defining as safety. We've allocated in our budget 2 Measure U funded firefighters, 2 Measure U funded police officers, 2 Measure U funded code enforcement officers. I guess I wouldn't be telling you this if they weren't Measure U funded, so I'm not really necessarily sure I got to say that, but it even sounded ridiculous to me after about the third one. 4 parks and maintenance techs, 4 public works operators, 1 administrative assistant, 1 engineering senior civil engineer. We had talked about a janitorial services contract, and then we had talked about equipment, fire vehicles, police vehicles. We also talked about road repair and maintenance, equipment replacement fund, vehicle replacement fund, and a fund reserve in that. So I believe that most everything here matches that. I know there was some general disagreement regarding the positions of the administrative assistant, the engineer, and contract janitorial services. How does that fit in? We have not done anything with those yet, and we're not going to. We're going to see how this money actually works out. What our tax consultant told us today is that it's going to take several more months before we actually see what the numbers are. So I would like to take a very conservative approach until this thing settles down and we know exactly what it is. I want to start doing things, but I don't want to get overly carried away with things that have to be sustainable, that we've obligated ourselves to, that we cannot afford. So I just want to go slow and easy with this and then just see where we're at. Right now, what we're doing, the project that we did start today, is a tree pruning project. What we've done is we've hired an outside consultant to start trimming trees. We're going to use that consultant for 2 weeks. The plan is to do this on a daily basis for the next 2 weeks. Once that's finished, we'll see how effective and efficient that was. If it is effective and efficient, then what my intent would be is to go back to the count, or to put it out to request for bid, get bids on this, because there are more than one tree pruning or tree arborist service in the city of Oroville. We will get our best price from in the community, and then we will bring it back to council. And my intention would be at this point is to allocate approximately $60,000 of Measure U money toward tree consulting trimming services, because the issue we have at the Public Works yard right now is we actually lost another one of our Public Works operators who was one of our tree people down there. So we are losing people faster than what we're hiring them. So that is the only expenditure that we have to report from this. And right now, the expenditures to date are $1,200 of this money. So we are going very slow and very easy with this, because like I said, I don't want to overextend ourselves. Projects that we are contemplating for next year is if anyone, yes, sir. Well, I want to see what we get done, and then I want to see what that number, because what I was ultimately thinking was it was a $40,000, or I'm sorry, $100,000 project, 40 toward one part of it, 60 toward the other, 60 was toward the trees because it was more pressing. 40 was going to be pushed toward road repairs, immediate emergency road repairs prior to winter, so that we can get some of that begun and started. But we haven't got to that point where we are prepared to talk any more about the road part at this point. Yes, ma'am.
How much is, I'm sorry. How much is the consulting?
The tree service is $1,200 a day for the truck.
A day?
Yes, a day.
Okay.
For the truck, 2 men, 8-hour day. They get rid of all the limbs and anything that's necessary. And I wanted to see what that, I mean, I realize that sounds like a lot of money, but for that type of equipment and personnel
Yeah.
and everything, that's not really a lot of money.
They're
But I want to
covering all the
see,
insurance and everything, it's nothing.
correct. And I just want to see what it will do. I'm just curious, because I know it's easy to say, hey, go out there and cut trees. It's $1,200, especially when, people look at it like, well, it's not your money, so you don't care. But, well, I do care, and I want to see what I'm getting for $1,200 per day for 2 weeks. So I can report back intelligently to you and let you see what's going on. We began today at 2nd and Montgomery, down in the downtown core. Wade is our city arborist, and Wade is going to direct them to the 100 worst trees first, and to deal with those, because we're having a lot of limb drop right now because of the weight of the trees and the water that they've pulled up over the summer. So we are dealing with that. A project next year that we're looking at is, if you didn't see it, is we had a presentation last week on roller compacted concrete. The same stuff they used on the spillway. We are looking at doing Feather River Boulevard from Montgomery to Ore Dam in that, and that will most likely be a Measure U project. But we'll get to that when we get to that point. Once we get the cost and everything, we'll bring that back to you and have that discussion and make sure that makes sense before we go back to our council. Our council will ultimately make the decision, but it is something that needs to be done. So we are looking toward those things to do that. I believe everything that we have laid out in our original thoughts, for the most part, with the exception of the 3 that I mentioned, are within what the goals that were set by the definition of safety that was set by the Oversight Committee. So at this point, there isn't a lot at this point to talk about, because we are going very slow on this, because we don't know what it's going to be at this point. You know, when you see 1 month's 9,000, 2 months later it's 778,000. I would love to spend up to the 778,000, but I think that's probably a dangerous thing to do. And I also don't think it's a responsible thing to spend down to the 9,000 either, because this money was paid to us with the intent of making our community better. One of the issues that we're running into, just to share with you, and this is an issue that the city has, is that we're having a difficult time hiring people. So if you know of anybody looking for a job, we have multiple jobs that are available. They're good jobs. You know, there's just no labor pool right now. The issue is we're down to approximately 4% unemployment, which means that anybody that is looking for a job has a job. The other 4% are not looking for work. So it's just very difficult to find individuals. So we are looking for public works operators. We got some inside work, the administrative assistant type of work. We have code enforcement, parks maintenance techs. We have a lot of good jobs in the city. So we're advertising in multiple different places on Craigslist, Facebook, our own website. We've put it on the billboard as you come into town to say, check the city website, we're hiring. But anybody else, you know, if you know anybody, please send them this way. We're looking for responsible people that are interested in work. And like I say, we're losing them faster than what we're getting them. So it's a very... It depends on where you come in the pay scale. The public works operators, Ruth, what do those run usually? Annually?
I would say the entry level is about 35 to 38,000.
And I think they top out at like 52.
Plus benefits.
Plus, right, that's going to include
Benefits.
medical retirement, PERS, PEPRA, retirement, things like that. So it does include those. Our public works and our parks and trees maintenance are about the same. Code enforcement is a little bit more than that. You know, so, and the administrative assistants, they go anywhere, I think, from 32 again to about 54, same kind of price range. So, you know, I'm having a harder time as I'm getting older deciding what is a good wage. I remember when I was young that if I could make $20, I would, you know, man, I would be on it. I mean, now I tell people that and they look at me like I'm crazy. What are you gonna do with $20? I mean, but, so I have to keep myself in check. So anyway, I'm sorry we don't have a lot to report to you tonight. I did think it was important to bring you up on how much money's come in. Let you know that we are being very conservative about this. We're not spending a lot of it, but also let you know that we have started a project, and there will be more to report to you next time. There will be some expenditures. There probably will be some hiring that was done behind this, and we'll probably have more of a discussion about other things that will fit this, that we can get the approval of the Oversight Committee. Now, what you'll hear from me in the future when I'm talking to the council is I'll say I have talked to the Oversight Committee about these. We have met, we've set this, our priorities, and these meet the priority of what safety is for the Oversight Committee. It was in this report, it's in our budget, and we're using Measure U money. And we have been, I'm going to say we have been to the Oversight Committee with that. So if anybody has an issue with that, please let me know. If, you know, like I say, I don't want you to be sitting at home or here thinking, well, that's a big fat lie. We haven't talked about that. You know, so if I hire somebody that is a public works operator and I say this is Measure U funded, we've, you know, done all this, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I mean.
Bill?
So
Why don't you share about what the campfire impact, the 2 million?
oh, we were, in this year's state budget, the city was, through our efforts with our campfire relief and with having Mr. Lando here and the contacts that he has within the state and being a widely recognized expert in all of this, he was able to have $2 million included in the state budget for the city of Oroville. And that's all it says is we're getting $2 million. There's no strings, we just get $2 million to offset the impacts of the campfire. So we'll be utilizing that too for roads and different things like that. We'll be paying Mr. Lando with that so that it's not coming out of the general fund or impacting anything else. So we'll be utilizing those dollars for that. Ultimately, the council has to make these decisions, but these will be
Right.
my recommendations to
Right.
them. So that was a very good thing for the city. This $1.4 million that you see that was reported tonight, that's actually going to be reported into last year's fiscal year's budget, which will show as carryover from last year because we didn't expend none of it. But we are accounting for it into the pockets in which we said, so that we know how much money we have in the pockets and where it's at. So that was actually really good news for us. I don't, unless you want to know more about it.
No, I just wanted to
There's
share-
very
just-
little.
just to share with
It's very unusual. I mean, Tom worked with Assemblyman Gallagher and Senator Nielsen and all that. It was part of Assemblyman Gallagher's bill, and we got, coincidentally, we got 2 million, and Chico got 3 million. So you look at it proportionately, we got a much huger piece of the pie. I think Tom has served us well, and
Well, we did a lion's share of the work.
Yes, we
And
have.
if it weren't for the Hope Center and everything that they did at that time, and they still are, they're still, they've opened something up in Paradise and up on the Ridge, and in Butte Valley, and actually, I think in Chico.
what I've been told as far as the cleanup, recovery, and response, we're going to see a drop-off now of debris trucks that are the dump trucks with the metal and the different things that they were bringing down from Paradise. Those will be dropping off in October. And then you're going to see the area inundated with logging trucks.
Yeah.
Because there is a huge amount of logging up there. I just was at the Board of Supervisors today, and I know they let a contract to remove 7,000 trees in their right-of-way. And that has nothing to do with the rest of the burned out area in the campfire where FEMA will be doing it. So
Right.
that was just in the county right-of-ways. So there's going to be a huge amount of trees that you'll see coming down from there. So, just when you thought it was going to get better, it's just going to change.
Right.
For now, it's necessary to, get the area cleaned up and prepared. So anyway, unless you have any questions, I don't want to eat up any more of your night. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you hearing this. Like I say, it's going to become a little more interesting and a little more in-depth each time as we learn more about it and we have more expenditures and we have more revenues. Hopefully we'll have something stabilized at our next meeting so that we can see a regular pattern of what this is going to produce, and then we can lay out a better annual plan of what we're going to do, because I have no intention of hiring anybody until I meet certain thresholds. Once we're at that threshold and it's a sustainable number, then I'll consider hiring somebody, utilizing this funding for that. In the meantime, I think it's the most prudent thing to do is we're kind of in a wait and see mode, and we will respond to emergency situations like the trees and
Right.
in road situations that we have immediately with some of these dollars. But I also don't want to use these on Band-Aids. These are going to have to be for long-term fixes. So that's what I have for you this evening. There's a couple different corridors that we're considering. There's three that I'm thinking of right now off the top of my head. Feather River Boulevard from Montgomery to Ore Dam. I'm also thinking about South 7th from Ore Dam to Cal Oak. And then I'm also considering Myers from Ore Dam to Wyandotte. Because all three of those, with the RCC, there's no internal metals that are required. It's really just pretty much a cold pour process, and they can pour quickly. There's very little site preparation that's necessary, and it's actually right now a little bit cheaper than asphalt. But the good news on the good side, well, that's good news, but more good news is no maintenance is required for the first 20 years. So you get 20 years of life. Yeah, you're ready to drive on it in 8 hours. And the other good part of it that I feel for the community as somebody that lives here is that when utilities go to work on something underneath it, they're required to replace the entire panel. It's no more this dig out a little spot, compromise the integrity of the asphalt, put some of the dirt back on top of it and call it good, and then our road goes to heck. So they're gonna have to dig out the whole thing, and I know that may upset some utilities, but as somebody that lives here and drives on the roads and pays regularly to have them repaired, I'm upset about compromising my roads constantly, so.
Yeah, I hadn't heard it being used as a road base or road surface.
No, I hadn't either until, it was in Western Cities Magazine and I read it in there. And there's actually a couple places in Roseville where they've done it as, in areas. So I really am interested in going down and seeing this, and I'm really interested in starting to get our roads done in that. Because if we can get a 20-year life with no maintenance, I mean, that's fantastic for
I'd like to
us.
see that too.
Yeah, that would be
Those
great.
are, not talking about not spending it to where you spend it over and over, that you can do one-time shots like with the trees or the fixing the road for 20 years. That's really a prudent way to spend the money. Getting back to what I opened the session with, I think before the meeting was open, was going back over that list and the ideas that we did. If you recall, Bill, that we had been in a workshop before to where we gathered that, and it was the conversation of, if we did this first, will all of the other ones be supported? And you go around it like a clock of, you know, which one really needs to be done first that's going to help the others. And, you know, getting the trees and certain things out of the way is very helpful. But when we start getting down to some of the other ones, it's kind of like, do you do a police officer first or a code enforcement first? Or, you know, where do you start really cleaning up, or maybe first, second, and third? And that's really a nice, the next thing I think I'm going to meet with Jackie and possibly you. And of course, if anybody else wants to, there's a couple of us, maybe even the council members could do that. Because it's fairly easy to do. It's just a little, you know, an aha moment of, wow. And then if we get that done, we can certainly present that and say, this is what we came up with. Because it's just really a formula of questions that you ask, and it becomes very aware of what needs to be, what's the driver? In other words, what's the main driver on there, that if this isn't done, the rest of them are never going to be really successful. So I would like to finish that portion. It's something that I do anyway, so.
I think we could probably, if you'd like, we can do that at our next meeting, especially when we have a better idea of what our dollars are. Because then we know, we can lay out a much better plan for ourselves about when we can do these things, what are our priorities. Because, you know, right now as it stands, if you were to go in there and say, hey, I want to hire all police and all fire. Okay, well, to hire all police and all fire, each one's probably about $135,000 roughly each. I'm just guessing off the top of my head. So you're looking at $540,000 for 4 employees. Well, you also got equipment. We're gonna have to buy vehicles for them, not firemen, but policemen. And then we're also gonna have safety equipment and things like that. So all of these things have to be factored into there when we do that. So we could shoot through that $1.4 million with those 4 positions, or it would be more than that, but not more than 1.4, more than those positions. But we could shoot through that money really quickly. So I think it's really important that we know what our actual expected revenues will be, and then set our priorities to that. Understanding what, like you said, what is our priority? What are you trying to accomplish? If we're trying to give people a sense of safety without doing anything more than that, there's ways about going about that. If we're really trying to affect quality of life changes, then there's other priorities. Your parks might be more important, or your code enforcement might be more important. Just show and door, a cop's going to be more important. It just depends on what you're trying to do, what you're trying to accomplish. So we need to figure that out. And I think the council's also engaged in a conversation right now of dealing with, I don't know what you call people that are living on the street, but I'm going to call them street people, because anything you call them seems to be derogatory or misleading. So individuals that are living on the street that aren't living to minimum community standards, the council has begun to take that topic on. And so I think Measure U is going to play a part in that, but what part does it play? It certainly isn't going to fund the whole project, or it isn't going to make it go away. But if your quality of life issues are what you're looking at, well, your code enforcement might be more important than your police officer or your MLE, but that's...
Backing up to the radar chart or the clock, it's like there's a couple on there that I think if we don't do, and maybe they cost the least amount of money, but it's kind of like doing your budget at home, that you have all your wishes and wants, and it's like, okay, what do we have to save for and what do we have to let go of on that list? It's not, to me, about talking about the dollars of it. It's just really talking about what's the true driver, because if the drivers turn out to be the things that cost the most money, we might need to pare that down or combine it, or consider going after all of the community quality of life things first at a lower cost. I mean, there's ways that we could, think about it,
right,
to where if we got rid of all the, the quality of life things, or went after all of those, that it might really turn around some of the need for all of the safety factors to that extent.
And we also have to keep in
That's
mind
wishful
that
thinking.
when we're talking about personnel, that's sustainable budgeting. When we're talking about fixing a road, that's a one-time
Yep.
fix.
Yep,
So, I mean, if we have a project that we want to do, and it's a $1.2 million project, we have to save the $1.2 million and then we're funded. That
Right.
project can be set to the side as long as we don't spend that money. We just
Right.
cannot, I would advise the Oversight Committee as well as the council, do not spend $4.5 million of sustainable positions because
Right.
there's going to be a downturn in the economy at some point. I'm not predicting it anytime soon, I don't believe, or anything like that. And our folks that do that for us are not predicting anything huge. However, I don't personally live up to the edge of my income, and I would advise everyone not to live up to the edge of their income.
well, I'm glad to see that we actually have more revenue. So I'm really happy about that.
Yeah, no, it's a fantastic, it's one of those things, it's a good problem to have. So,
Finally.
Yeah, I mean, that's, it's,
Bill, will you just put that $2 million in with that? Is that what you're saying? You're gonna put that in with this?
well, what
It's
we'll do is,
different-
we'll go to the
it's
council. No, it won't be mixed with the Measure. The Measure U money will be accounted for separately, because we want to make sure that everybody can clearly see, hey, this is the Measure U money, and these are the projects it went to. Now, that doesn't mean that a Measure U project, if it was, $500,000 short, it was $1 million project, we may do 500,000 from Measure U, 500 from this other money, this one-time dollars, if it was a one-time project. So we could intermingle those for payment purposes, but not for accounting purposes.
But it's kinda like that. You can use it to.
Yeah, it's literally one line. There's no restrictions. I mean, it's like, I wish I got money like that all the time. That'd be fantastic.
I'm ready for my steak dinner.
Me too.
Well, Aaron, it's good to see you. Where have you been? Are we ready to adjourn the meeting?
I believe, unless anybody has any questions, it's, that's what we're intending on doing.
Don't take it personally.
No, it's fine.
Reports, discussion, correspondence, anybody?
I have a quick question. Number 5 on our goal priority setting workshop is city personnel. Is that the administrative assistant that you're talking about?
No,
Or
that's
other city
the,
personnel? What is
that's all the city personnel. That's the parks and trees, public works, police. That's anybody that's considered personnel.
as a subcategory of number 6 and number 7 and number
Correct.
9? Okay, thank
I
you.
mean, because our priority was to take care of the parks, to do the tree trimming and things like that. In order to do that, we have to have city personnel, parks and trees. Have to have somebody to run the saw.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned.
And the next meeting will be?
Next meeting will be when?
Is that the 26th?
It would be November 26th.
November 26th? That's the week of Thanksgiving, yes?
I'm good with it.
Good with it, too.
You're in a 3-month